most trusted name in news.
Donald Trump Jr. slamming the ongoing Russia investigation tonight. I want to bring in now CNN national security analyst General Michael Hayden, the former director of the CIA and the former director of the National Security Agency. Good to have you on, sir. Thank you so much. Good evening. Donald Trump Jr. just spoke to a group of conservative college students. Why don't you take a listen? This is a portion of what he had to say.
I'm glad that this is coming out now because it is good, because real people have to see this. You know, my father talked about a rigged system throughout the campaign, and people are, oh, what are you talking about? But it is, and you're seeing it. There is, and there are, people at the highest levels of government that don't want to let America be America. They don't want to let the little guy have a voice.
People at the highest levels of government who don't want to let America be America. Does it sound to you like Donald Trump Jr. is pushing a conspiracy theory about America's government?
Well, Don, I have to confess to you, when I first heard that earlier this evening, that was a little scary. I mean, that is an appeal to the heart of autocracy and challenging the patriotism of those folks who work in the United States government. Look, we've got good institutions in this country. They're imperfect. They make mistakes. We have imperfect people who send messages they shouldn't send, but that in no way undercuts the legitimacy of these institutions. And we're now seeing a constant attack, not just from the administration, but as the congressman suggested just a few minutes ago, from other members of the Republican Party attacking the institutions of American government. And it's those institutions, Don, the rule of law, the processes that keep us a free people.
So why would the president's son say something like that?
Well, I mean, I don't know that Don Jr. has been marked by a cool, calm judgment in his public utterances in the past. But what it suggests to me is that in their heart of hearts, they don't think this investigation is going to a happy place, at least not a happy place from their point of view. And Don, I'm not predicting criminal indictments about collusion or anything like that. But I do think as the investigation goes on, we learn more and more about the synchronization of activities of the Trump campaign, including by the president's son, with WikiLeaks and the actions of the Russian Federation.
So you think it has that he may be concerned, anything to do with it, he may be concerned about the personal consequences for himself, his family, or his father?
Sure. And look, they're family. They have concerns for one another. That's human. That's understandable. But, you know, you need someone around this group who advises them, number one, this isn't wise on their behalf, and the collateral damage they're doing to American institutions, belief in the American government, the integrity of the American system. Don, my great fear, based upon that earlier quote, that we're going to do long-term damage to things on which we depend.
Our reliable institutions, the institutions that made America great to begin with. But it's interesting because I would imagine most people would say if their father was president of the United States, they would let the presidenting leave the presidenting up to their father. Yeah. And the comments as well, you're right, they would be wise to do that. The former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, joined CNN yesterday to talk about President Trump's relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here's what he had to say.
I think this past weekend is illustrative of what a great case officer Vladimir Putin is. He knows how to handle an asset, and that's what he's doing with the president.
So here's what Clapper went on to say, that he meant that in he said a figurative way. But I'm curious what your reaction is to his comment.
No, I agree with Jim, particularly since he qualified it, saying he was speaking in a figurative sort of way. Look, Vladimir Putin's a case officer. Case officers attempt to influence other people. We've got this little tool we use that, how do you influence others? Money, ideology, compromise, ego. Putin will pull the lever that is most of use to him in all of his relationships. So it's not surprising he would try to do it with our president. And frankly, in this case, I think the one that stands out, the technique that seems most the one he appears to be most using, is appeal to ego.
I want to read something. This is Sally Yates, a former Attorney General of the United States, wrote in an op-ed to USA Today. She said, "Our shared values include another essential principle, and that's the rule of law, the promise that the law applies equally to everyone, that no person is above it, and that all are entitled to its protection. The rule of law requires a strict separation between the Justice Department and the White House on criminal cases and investigations. This wall of separation is what ensures the public can have confidence that the criminal process is not being used as a sword to go after one's political enemies or as a shield to protect those in power. It's what separates us from an autocracy." Are you concerned that our country could be moving away from the democracy that we were founded on?
Yeah, I've got a great deal of confidence in American political culture, the American people, and as already suggested, Don, American institutions. But Ms. Yates is pointing out something that's quite real. This attack, as I said before, on the institutions, the undercutting of the legitimacy of processes, imperfect as they may be, on which we all depend. And Don, in that article, she went on to talk about the critical role of truth in sustaining American democracy, and we see that under attack as well as our institutions.
Yates also went on to write that this is a moment for America to return to its core values. Do you agree with that, and what kind of effort will that take?
Don, I have spent more time reflecting and reading the Federalist Papers in the last 2 years than I have cumulatively over the last 50 years of my life. We're returning to basics, and my great hope is after this period, we emerge from this with a greater, deeper understanding and appreciation for what makes America, America, to refer to the quote from Don Jr. before.
Amen. So listen, we're a year into Trump's presidency. How are America's institutions holding up, you think?
Actually, pretty well. That sound you hear from Washington is actually the sound of American institutions pushing back, whether it's law enforcement, the courts, you guys in the press, American intelligence. Don, we've even had moments where we've got the NFL and the Boy Scouts of America pushing back.
Listen, the president reportedly expects to be exonerated from this whole investigation. And do you think that'll happen? And if he's not, what do you think will happen there?
Don, look, I have no insight into what Bob Mueller is doing and the details, the evidence that he is building. I'm certainly not a lawyer, but if you're asking me as a layman where this ends up, unfortunately, as I suggested earlier in our conversations, it probably ends up in an ambiguous place. We may see some indictments for peripheral activities, whether it's tax or money laundering or registering as an agent of a foreign power and so on. But on the core question of collusion, there may not be enough evidence to show any crime. And what we'll have is people who thought there was collusion going in will believe there's collusion going out, and people with a contrary view will have their view equally sustained and will be left in this netherworld without resolution.
Thank you, sir. It is always a pleasure.
Thank you.
When we come back, has the president made